Hi everyone, and welcome back to Pause for Self-Care. This one, I actually purposely decided not to record my face because I want to give you quite a bit of information, and I just thought that it would be better to do a voice recording and go from there. So, yeah. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I do hope that you subscribe, and by watching these videos, I do hope you find insight into helping you with your healing journey. So yeah, please do go back to the previous videos that I've done because they might help you too, and I will be continuing this deep dive into childhood trauma.
In all of us, in our hearts, there's love and light that we must realize. We need to feel, we need to use this warmth that could make bright our lives. In all of us, in our hearts, there's love and light that we must realize.
So the reason I decided to do this video is because many people went through abuse or neglect without actually realizing it. And, people think, abuse is physical abuse, but there are different forms of abuse and neglect. And also, another reason for wanting to do this video is because we have issues stemming from the various forms of abuse and neglect we went through. And because our experiences aren't validated or we aren't aware of it, we just leave it idle and struggle through it. And we also don't know how to fix it. So in this video, I'll give you some different types of abuse and neglect so you can see whether you went through it or are still going through it, or even seeing whether you are using these things against others. Because of the way we were brought up, we are inclined to learn by example, and you can't blame yourself for that. But you can change, and that is what is really, really important here. The difference between abuse and neglect. These can severely affect a child's development and psychology. Abuse and or neglect can leave damaging effects and likely lifelong issues and trauma. Both abuse and neglect can vary in severity, and it can take on many forms. Please also note that there is a possibility of an overlap. For example, medical neglect can be considered physical abuse, or emotionally abusive behavior can be considered emotional neglect. Physical abuse. This is the repeated use of physical force on another person, intending to cause injury, pain, impairments, or even death. Sexual abuse. In general, sexual abuse is non-consensual sexual implications, harassment, or contact that may involve force and or threats, or it may occur when a victim is unable to consent. Now, what I'd like to really note here is with children, grooming will be involved, and they will look up to the adult, and a child cannot give consent. They are not old enough, their brain isn't old enough to consent. So we really, really need to look very much deeply into that. Look, I won't be doing that on my channel, but if you have experienced sexual abuse as a child, I think it is very important for you to speak to a counsellor or get more direct help to help you through that abuse and just vile to think what adults can do to children. Emotional abuse. This is also known as psychological abuse or mental abuse. It is when the abuser intentionally causes mental or emotional pain in the victim through verbal or non-verbal acts. It's almost always present when another form of abuse is found. Verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is generally a form of emotional abuse. It occurs when an abuser uses words and body language intentionally to hurt the victim. Physical neglect. Physical neglect is usually what people think of when they hear the word neglect. It occurs when a child's basic physical needs repeatedly go unmet. Medical neglect. Medical neglect is a form of physical neglect. It is the failure to provide proper health care for a child, even when financially able to do so. Supervisory neglect. Another form of physical neglect is supervisory neglect. It's when the adult responsible for the child fails to supervise or provide proper supervision to keep the child from harm. Environmental neglect. Environmental neglect is also a form of physical neglect. It occurs when a child's home environment is unsanitary and unsafe. Educational neglect. Educational neglect occurs when a child isn't given access to education or when the child is excessively absent from school. Emotional neglect. Emotional neglect occurs when a child's emotional needs aren't being met. It's when the caregiver is not giving the child the love, care, affection, and attention the child needs to healthily develop. Many forms of emotional neglect are also forms of emotional abuse. Emotional neglect is usually more difficult to identify than other types of neglect. It is thought to be more severe than other types. However, it does often occur with other types of neglect or abuse, which may be easier to notice. Gosh, if you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. I do hope that the information I've given you gives you more insight into your journey and that you can take steps forward to find healing. So here we go. Thank you so much to the newbies and the OGs. I appreciate you all for your likes, your comments, and your shares across social media. Until next time, remember to pause for self-care.